All right, so this is Writing to Learn Journal 6, which is about the importance of vocabulary. So the text I chose is for music, middle school, middle school 3, which is like 8th grade or freshman. And it's knowledge and skills and foundations of music literacy is the strand. And the knowledge and skills statement is the student describes and analyzes music and musical sound. The student demonstrates fundamental skills appropriate for developing a young musician. And it says, and the student expectation is compare and contrast exemplary musical examples using technology and available live performances. So I chose this one because obviously comparing and contrasting musical examples is takes a lot of vocabulary words, and so my top ways to describe music or when you're trying to compare and contrast, it can be divided into four different sections, and so the first one is texture, the second one is dynamics, the third one is tempo, and the next one is effects of music. And so this is how, going back to the text, this is how you're going to compare and contrast the musical examples. And so they're really, you can, well, I will show you later how it's different, like, to vocabulary for trying to explain what you heard. It's different. There's two different ways, which is one of them is musical and one not so much. It's more of kind of what you feel. But the first one, which is texture, is all music. So the texture is just how many like different lines, rhythms, melodies are. And these are 5 examples of how you would define texture. Biophonic is 2 distinct lines. Polyphonic is multiple melodic voices independent from one another. Homorhythmic is multiple melodic voices with similar rhythmic material. Heterophonic, 2 or more voices performing various variations of the same melody. And monophonic is a single melodic line without accompaniment. So, for example, music, when it first started, I'm taking a history of music class, and we start way back from the 4th and 5th century, and everything used to be very, very monophonic. Everything was monophonic. There was only one line being sung, and it all really just sounded the same. And so it was in a time where only men were able to sing, so there was no women, and it was just either one man singing just one line by himself, like for the entire church service, because that's how music kind of started. It was only for sacred music, like secular music wasn't really allowed. So, and that's one of the ways to describe the texture. You can see you'll find maybe like a trumpet solo, and it's just trumpet. That would be called monophonic. But most music we hear, like pop music, that has like so many things going on. Like you have your bass, you have your guitar, you have your singer, your drums. That would be considered polyphonic. So I mean, that's just one of the ways to describe music, to compare and contrast them. And the next one is dynamics, and well, yeah, I don't think you guys can see the last one, but the dynamics, it just explains how loud or how soft the music is. And so like how I was saying earlier about the two different ways to describe it. You can either say, "Oh, that was kind of loud," or "That was very soft." But there are actual words for that. Like pianissimo is when they're like very, very soft. Then the next one is piano, which is just soft. Mezzo piano, medium soft. Mezzo forte, medium loud. Forte is loud. And fortissimo is very loud. So whenever, let's say an example would be, well, when I get to do, for most of my classes, I have to do reviews of a concert. And, like to describe it, I can't just be like, well, that piece was very soft. That is so unacceptable. You have to use the vocabulary words, and that way, you really know how how precise you can be with your dynamics. Because you can say very soft, but I mean, pianissimo is much more descriptive. And going back to the tics, part of it is the student demonstrates fundamental skills appropriate for developing a young musician. And for dynamics, all dynamics are marked in when you are playing music. You have your dynamic levels. Like when it's your part, and in the bottom it'll tell you if it's fortissimo, is it forte, or you know. And so, for another part of dynamics is decrescendo, which is getting softer, and crescendo is getting louder. And that is just another way to describe, because you can say, well, it started soft at the beginning and it ended up being very loud. Or you can just say the music really crescendoed as it moved forward. And yeah, as a matter of fact, right now there's a piece that I'm playing that it really starts pianissimo. That's how it starts. And after like 5 measures, it's moving to piano, and then mezzo piano, mezzo forte, and it really gives it a very good effect. All right, so here's I was able to find two different ways to define the tempo, which is how slow or how fast it is going. And so, I mean, here in the left, you have the words that are, what somebody that doesn't know much about music. Well, I don't want to. It's nothing bad. It's just how they feel the music, how fast it was going. Some people can say fast, or it was quick, upbeat, or they can say it was slow. But music is always marked with as by like beats per minute. So when the very slowest one is larghissimo, and I think my camera is covering all this, but it'll be fine. It's just an example. So for when I'm asked to describe music, I would say things like, well, it was very andante. It was at a walking pace, or it was very allegro, which is very fast and quick. And lastly is the effects of music, which this one is only how you feel, and there's no really musical terms for this. This is just one way I would compare and contrast music, but this is really all up to the listener, because this is how music makes you feel. So whenever you're listening to music, like from the tics, it says compare and contrast. What was it? Musical examples using technology and available live performances. So in this, I mean, it's just up to the listener, and it's just one way to compare and contrast. But I mean, if it wasn't for vocabulary, it would be so hard to be able to tell somebody, how what you think of a piece. Did it make you? Did it soothe you? Did it excite you? Some of them can be even frightening, or Halloween music has that feel to it. Did it uplift you? It heals, it empowers, enlighten. These are just words that make describing music much easier. And going back to the teaks, comparing and contrasting exemplary musical examples. I mean, there is no way to compare and contrast them without vocabulary. You know, vocabulary is very important, um, especially when comparing and contrasting. And doing that will really help develop a young musician. Um, Once you start playing a piece, you will, it's all up to, again, I said the listener, but to some pieces it will make you feel much more different than to what other people hear. So yeah, that is it. Goodbye.